Good evening,
Hey,
everybody, and
Trevor.
welcome back to Spartan Nation Radio. It's now time to bring in legendary state of Michigan high school football and basketball coach. We call him just plain the great coach Chuck Grenier, the one, the only, the legend, with the good, the bad, and the ugly with Spartan sports. Coach, we're going to start with Spartan football. They go beat a mediocre Wake Forest team in the bowl game, and Josiah Scott leaves early for the NFL. That's no shock. This is a team now that we've got a war room coming out. I'm just curious, your thoughts on the state of Michigan State football. Here we are, well after the bowl game. Other teams have already hired staff. Other teams have already made changes. I'm telling you what I'm hearing from people on the inside. I'm not breaking this as a story because Mark D'Antonio has not confirmed it. But I am hearing Jim Bowman will retire. I don't expect Terrence Samuel to return, and one other staff member will be reassigned. Is that enough to you?
Well, I don't think so. It may be. I think some of the problems that Spartan football is looking at in the future. Well, number one is quarterback, and with Bowman leaving, bringing in maybe a top flight, as much money as you can spend. Offensive line coach would be something really, really interesting to me. But the quarterback position is so unsettled right now. I know there's an article from one of the Detroit papers saying that he'd be looking at the transfer portal, but I don't know. It just seems like there's such a disconnect now with the coaching staff and with the football players and what's going on. I think that it's possible losing 2-3 coaches and bringing in some fresh blood, specifically a top-notch offensive line coach, that things might work its way to 19 or to 2020 football season in a positive way. But that quarterback position is that I think that's really, really a big question mark for 2020.
Coach, I'm going to ask you point blank. You say new blood, but do you expect D'Antonio? I mean, only one time in his career has he went outside of himself to get someone who didn't have connections, and that was Ron Burton. Do you expect him to go outside of his sphere of influence?
I would think you have to. The development of the offensive line over the last few years has been really poor. And I think you've got to go and you've got to get the best possible person you can put in that position and start to develop the offensive lineman, maybe have some influence on the blocking schemes. You watch some of the bowl games, you watch some of the regular season games, and there's such innovative ways of thinking of blocking certain situations. I don't know if you picked it up or anything. On the Alabama-Michigan game, when Alabama ran the last touchdown, the run-it-up touchdown, there was a unique spacing between center and guards on that, and then they ran it right up the chute on that. That kind of innovative thinking, that's got to start happening with Michigan State. Instead of coming out and, inside zone, outside zone, and that kind of thing. And I think that is probably, in my opinion, quarterback and the offensive line and the blocking schemes are the major issues going into the 2020 season.
Coach, what percentage convinced are you that Mark D'Antonio is coming back?
I'm 50-50 right now. I thought all along during the course of the year that he was going to be gone. I still, maybe it's 51-49 that he's leaving, but it's kind of the way he's talked, and maybe he's just stubborn and he wants to stay. I'm not quite sure, but for me, I would think it may be time for him to move on. If he were to come in and make those changes, maybe hit that transfer portal and bring in some blood. I think linebacker is in need, quarterback is in need, those kind of things. And if he were to do that, Mark D'Antonio did a great job at Michigan State. I could live with Mark D'Antonio being a coach for a long time there. But there's got to be some changes. It's got to be Well, I guess that's just the way to say it. There's something's got to be done because what's going on right now is not working.
We're talking to the great Coach Chuck Grenier, the legendary State of Michigan high school football and basketball coach. Coach, I want to keep talking about football. They bring in a class of recruits, good guys, all of them development guys. There's not one guy in the class you look like and say that's a surefire guy. There's some guys you think could develop. How concerning is that for you? They've had a couple now of classes with last year's was certainly much better than this one, but I mean, how concerned are you about the future talent-wise?
Well, I am concerned because you look at what I'm seeing anyway is returning at the linebacker position, and that is a real concern for me. Besides Antoine Simmons, I'm really scratching my head at looking at what's there. Is that going to be top flight level Big Ten linebacker play? And then you look at maybe the defensive end position, and Fletcher didn't play a lot this year, but I'm still out on him as far as he's going to be able to do that. You lose Willikis. So, the depth at some of the positions on defense is a concern, maybe especially at cornerback, too, with Scott leaving early. So developing those players quickly is going to be really a position of need, and not having somebody that can walk in off the streets and insert themselves into the defensive play is going to be a concern. And then offensively, I think there's enough people there offensively that can hold up those positions. I think we got an outstanding wide receiver group in there. I think that's really the strength of the program right now. And I think the offensive linemen can come around, and the depth at running back looks okay. But, not having somebody that we're looking at, like those 4 or 5 star recruits, pearls, I don't know what else you want to call them, but that is a concern.
Coach, how concerned are you at running back? There just isn't a lot of blazing speed. I was talking to an SEC coach recently who said to me that they were watching the film of Michigan State and were stunned at the lack of speed at running back. How concerning is it to you?
Well, Collins is going to be your returning number 1 running back, and he does not have that burst. Williams does have a burst. I don't know about the size factor in that. He's shown that he can do the jet sweeps and things along that line, and there is a little bit of a burst there, but it's nothing like you see in some of the other teams. If you go back to maybe the Maryland game when we beat Maryland this year, and McFadden, he doesn't touch the ball. I think the last 2 possessions that Maryland has, that guy just scared me to death every time he touched the ball. We don't have that. That is a concern. So if you don't have that bust him out of the backfield, that quickness, and you don't have to get a big 5-star recruit, McFadden or something like that. You just got to hit somebody that's got some wheels. You've got to have a threat to the outside. You just can't jam up between the tackles.
Coach, if you're a quarterback here, you're Rocky Lombardi, Theo Day, Peyton Thorne, and you hear they're going to look at the portal, what does that tell you?
Tells me, and I think anybody else that knows if a football is blown up or stuff, that the quarterbacks have not been coached well in the last few years at Michigan State. You can see with Brian Lewerke how erratic he was, how non-consistent he was throwing the ball. And then you just slow it down and you look at his footwork and his technique, and it's no wonder that he was so erratic. He was not getting the coaches or the coaching, or maybe the discipline of the coaches to make sure that he used good technique. I saw the other day on it was Green Bay Packers were playing, and Aaron Rodgers there was having some trouble throwing the ball, and the commentator said that because he had such a good arm when he was younger that he didn't have to worry about technique, but his arm isn't as live anymore, and now he has to really start working on technique. Well, we haven't got quarterbacks that have that great arm, and they have poor technique. So if they're looking at the portal for a quarterback coming in, either they don't feel that the quarterbacks on the roster are good enough, or they're just not getting the technique, and they're just looking at somebody to come in that's already proven. That's what it says to me.
Coach, you and I have talked about this extensively. After the 2016 season, Terrence Samuel was approached by an SEC school that was willing to double his salary. He had done such a good job coaching wide receivers at Michigan State. And Coach Samuel chose to say, in fact, Coach Samuel said to them, I would not leave Mark Dantonio for any opportunity after a season like this. He deserves our loyalty. And I thought that was, he had a chance to double his salary. And then 17, he did great with wide receivers. And last year, he was the only offensive coach to do good. If you looked at all the injuries they sustained, he was the only offensive coach to do good, and he got demoted. If what I'm hearing from the inside is true, and now Mark Dantonio gets rid of him, I asked Mark Dantonio after 17 about Samuel staying and turning down an SEC job. And he talked about that's the kind of program we have here. It's built on loyalty. They give that to me. I give that to them. What does that say if he uses Terrence Samuel as a scapegoat and gets rid of Terrence and keeps other coaches that you and I are very well aware have underperformed?
Well, that kind of shoots down that idea of loyalty, doesn't it? I mean, you have the opportunity to go to another team and get your resume a little bit better, collect more money for your family, move up the ladder, so to speak, towards maybe DC at some time or that sort of speak, and then you get thrown, or OC, that you get thrown under the bus like that. That really shoots the idea of loyalty all to heck, doesn't it?
I agree. All right, now let's switch to basketball, the good, the bad, and the ugly with basketball. Your thoughts on this Spartan basketball team and how they're doing?
Well, I thought that the Illinois game was the best game they played all year, and then they went home in Michigan. The players are really starting now. The supporting group, not Tillman, not Winston, but the supporting group has stepped up and took the next step. Henry is becoming a little bit more aggressive, still reluctant to take a shot, but he's handling the ball better. He's a little bit more aggressive. A couple of moves he used against Illinois. Wow. What that kid can bring. Gabe Brown, extremely active right now, lots of energy. And I think if you're going to look at any kind of bad as far as the basketball team, I would look at a player like Hall. Now, Malik Hall has got a lot of talent, but the game is still too fast for him right now. If he watches somebody like a Gabe Brown and how active he is, how he moves his feet. Most of the time Hall gets in trouble, his feet aren't moving. He's body bumping people and he gets called on it. Bingham. I remember Izzo saying that you're a player, not Bingham, but somebody in the past, there are people that really don't love basketball. Then once they start loving basketball, they become better players. Bingham, for the first part of his career, for most of his career here in Michigan State, played basketball. He wasn't a basketball player, but now he's starting to come into that being a basketball player. His 10 rebounds and 5 blocks against Illinois shows that you don't have to be a scorer. You can be a good defensive player and add to the team. Lawyer's starting to shoot now a little bit, and he's finding confidence in his shot. There's a lot of good stuff happening out there. You bring in Marble the other day, and Marble gives them 5 fouls, gives them a big body they can bump against bigger people with, and he's starting to get the idea about playing basketball at the Big Ten level at Michigan State. So there's so many good things going on right now. One concern I had was Kithier. Kithier has kind of went downhill from where he was before, and I think maybe Izzo was after him a little bit more about doing something, because it seems like every time he gets a foul or something happens, he's looking at the bench, and that's a little concern. Like, just relax and play. You know, you're a player that is out there to rebound and play good defense, and don't worry about that other stuff. Just do that. So there's so many good things on there, and this talk about Winston, my gosh. You're not supposed to be able to do that in college basketball, what he's doing. When I was at Michigan State attending classes, and was skipping class and did the men's IM, that's the way people played the men's IM. little loop-de-loop and underhand baskets and that. You're not supposed to be able to do that at Big Ten level. And he is just fantastic. He's amazing.
He is the great coach Chuck Grenier, the man, the legend, the way of life. We'll be back. Way of life. We'll be back. Way of life.